We are Rogue Media Sports.
It is the Doomsday podcast, and Cowboys lose this one 34-6 to the Philadelphia Eagles. And Ed, Werder, here with me, and we are in a beautiful suite high above AT&T Stadium. And this thing has just completely gotten away from the Cowboys. They fall to 3-6. But Ed, there is no shortage. There's no shortage of headlines, some of which we've created ourselves. We've got a lot to hit on. One thing to kind of start with is you did run into Dak Prescott in the postgame locker room, and were able to maybe clarify a few of the things we've been hearing over the past 24 to 48 hours.
So, yes, after we spoke to Jerry Jones at two different locations after the game, I completely missed Mike McCarthy's press conference. Did see Dak Prescott in front of his locker getting dressed, so I went over. There were two or three other reporters there as well. His plan is to go tomorrow, Monday, fly to New York, have his hamstring avulsion, which means that the hamstring is partially detached from the bone. He's going to have it examined by one more specialist. So far, the recommendation has been for him to have surgery. If this specialist in New York confirms that opinion, Dak said he would stay in New York and have the surgery Wednesday. Either way, Matt, he essentially told us his season is over because he said if he has surgery, it's a 3 to 4 month recovery. And if he doesn't have the surgery, it would still be 6 to 8 weeks if his hamstring in that situation responded favorably to the therapy and the treatment option, which it really sounds like he's fully expecting to require surgery.
All right, so there you go. Doomsday bringing you behind the scenes. And at some point, Ed, we will share with our Doomsday audience Jerry's part 2 of his interview with the reporters. He talked outside the locker room. That was relatively brief, especially by his standards. And he kind of was like, okay. And he walked off. And then a few of us stayed with him. And then another Jerry news conference broke out. This one, the beginning of it was Jerry being extremely defensive, which he always has been, with the fact that the sun shines through here on these afternoon games at 5 or 5:30 as the sun's beginning to set. And it continues to be a problem. And
CeeDee Lamb said it was the reason he didn't see the ball in the end zone when the game was still close.
Yes. And what was that? A drive when they were only down
7-3, I think.
Was that 7-3?
I think it was 7-3
there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they didn't get that one done. Had to kick the field goal, and so again, Jerry extremely defensive of that. We've asked for years about, hey, could you put up some curtains? I mean, how much did he spend on this thing? I mean, I remember it was $1 million burn rate per day, and the thought of putting up some dark curtains or something on some of these day games that would help out is just beyond him. And so we'll share some of that with you. I thought, Ed, and we'll let our folks hear it, but I thought Jerry was interesting in the sense that on one hand, I mean, I do not understand this regret, and that's why I kind of followed up with him. He's got this regret now about having fired Wade Phillips. It was like 1-7. The team had quit on him out in Green Bay. Like, I think of all the things to regret, again, we like Wade, and Wade's a friend of ours, but that team was headed nowhere. And in fact, it was Jason Garrett's job as the interim coach that led to him becoming the full-time head coach.
Only for 10 years, though.
Yeah, only for 10 years. And so Jerry now is having, and he's using this to say, no, I'm not going to do something with Mike McCarthy. And I think
he was unequivocal about that again, that despite their 4th consecutive home loss. And let's remember, to create a little context, the Cowboys came into the season with a 16-game home winning streak, the longest in the NFL. They've lost 4 consecutive games at home to start the season, and only one of them appears close. None of them really were. The Ravens game appears close because the Cowboys scored 21 points when they were hopelessly behind in the 4th quarter, but really all of them were blowouts against far superior teams, except for New Orleans, although New Orleans did finally win another game today, but they've since fired their coach.
Correct.
But yeah, Jerry did speak about Mike McCarthy, and we'll let you hear it directly from Jerry.
Yeah, and New Orleans is maybe a reason why you should do an in-season. They've rallied behind their, what's his name?
Darren
Rizzi. Okay.
Darren Rizzi.
I was throwing that out to
Had
somebody.
a little problem with the toilet this morning, and thought it would a bad omen, but turns out not to be.
Please do share with us later on the Doomsday podcast. Okay, lots to get to, including Micah's return, more on Dak, and lots to get to with this team as this season completes.
Zeke's historic fumble.
Zeke, yeah, it's like they finally let him into the game on one series, and then that series ends in disaster. Although Zeke actually talked, by the way, by the time I relieved you at his locker, he talked for like 5 more seconds, helped by the PR who shouted out, okay, thank you.
Locker's closed.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was time for me to go. If I choose between Micah Parsons and Ezekiel Elliott at this point, which I did, I'm going to choose Micah Parsons.
Okay.
And I chose wisely.
But I was there to jump in if needed on Zeke. Ed and I are at AT&T Stadium. Mike Hamilton from Rogue Media Network. Please play the music. There it is. And thank you, Ronnie Foss, who I was with last night watching Baylor and Arkansas play basketball over at the AAC. And then, Ed, as you said, Cowboys continue 4 straight. I mean, it seemed like we hadn't been here in forever because we really hadn't been here in forever. And it was much like, I think the only thing that was different is he actually had a competitive game for a half. And I would just start right here with Micah and Lawson and others, Leofau making huge plays on defense. I mean, for the better part of a half, it seemed as though the Cowboys were going to try to make a game of this, pretty much based solely on the defense.
Yeah.
But Ed, of course, with this offense, and whether you want to blame the play caller, the fumbling, the bumbling, the quarterback, whatever you want to blame it on, is a mess. And the team ends up with 5 turnovers in the game. Some of them after the game had already been decided. But I mean, again, Ed, just on that, the return of Micah, we've been pointing. I know people don't think we provide much hope on this podcast, but from time to time,
it's called Doomsday.
Well, that's right. From time to time, we say, "Hey, Micah may be back. Deron Bland, help could be on the way." And today, Ed, at times, it looked like help had arrived in the way of Micah, the strip sack, some of those positive things. And then again, the Cowboys could not take advantage of that.
Well, here's what I would say. The thing that occurred to me as we were watching the first half unfold was that Mike McCarthy, he's well aware he's coaching in the final year of his contract. I'm sure he expects, as we all do, under the circumstances, that he's going to lose his job at the end of the year, and there's going to be a new coaching staff here next year. But it still struck me watching the game that Mike McCarthy was playing not to lose. He was playing with a conservative game plan, play calling. I thought he provided his players virtually no chance for success. I mean, he was obsessed with avoiding another embarrassing loss. A loss by more than a reasonable margin is success in the context of the way they're playing now. He just didn't want it to be 44-19. He didn't want it to be 47-9 again. And despite his best efforts, it almost became that anyway. But I thought, when Mike Zimmer lost his best players, when he lost Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, he took risks without his best players. Mm-hmm. And, Mike McCarthy coaches his first game this year without Dak, and he didn't. He didn't take any risk. It was all, sideways passing game, run on first down. They weren't aggressive at any point in the game. And, they had a 3-and-out series right after Trayvon Diggs makes an end zone interception to keep the game close.
Yeah.
And then so that had to be deflating. It was a potential, opportunity to change momentum in the game, but very little creativity from the offense. And then you mentioned it, Micah Parsons with the sack of Jalen Hurts causes a fumble that Maris Leofau recovers on the 6-yard line. The Cowboys have a short field and a chance for the lead. They've got 5 sacks, and 2 of them are by Micah Parsons. They have 2 takeaways, and then Zeke fumbles, and they get the ball back. And instead of going for it on 4th down, down 7-3. McCarthy has Brandon Aubrey kick a field goal after 3 plays and 1 yard from the Philly 6. So there are 2 offensive series immediately after those Eagles turnovers, 3 plays, 5 yards and a punt, 3 plays, 1 yard, and a field goal. I mean, I just thought it was absurd. Like, you're 3-5. Play to win.
Mm-hmm. What do you have to lose at this point? I mean, you've got your backup quarterback in there. Boy, they mixed in a jet sweep. The runs were, I mean, yeah, the whole thing. And then of course, Ed. I mean, they have a ceremonial player in Zeke, right? I mean, it's like they're using Dowdle. It's all Dowdle.
Deactivated him last week. Didn't even take him to the game as disciplinary measures. But then go ahead.
And then today they put him in. Probably don't know what the 4th or 5th series of the game. I mean, he hadn't played. Dowdle's playing. And then all of a sudden they gave him a series, and then they put him in there. And I mean, I honestly almost think it was Mike McCarthy. Like, see, here's a look at Zeke. Here's your look at Zeke for the game, Jerry. You want to see Zeke? Here he is. And it's the 3rd or 4th series of the game, and he gets hit. I think it was 53. What's that guy's name?
Zach Bond. And the ball comes flying in, out of there into the end zone. Well, I think he was playing in the situation they signed him playing. He's supposed to be the goal line short yardage back. He was that in week 1, and he scored on a 3-yard run. This was his most significant carry since week 1. And he got hit right on the ball, and he fumbled. And according to ESPN research, first time Ezekiel Elliott has turned the ball over in the red zone in his career. In his 9-year career, that's the first time he's lost the ball. And then the Cowboys get it back with a short field, and McCarthy kicks the field goal instead of going for it. It's unbelievable. I mean, you're right. The way he called that game was as if, hey, we're going to just hang around and have a shot, and we're going to keep this thing close. And if we haven't learned by now that when you jog as sure a thing as he is, and he's probably the best player on the team, but when you trot Aubrey out there, and we see this at home all year, it's just a sign that you're not going to win the game. I mean, you're just going to keep kicking field goals. Well, they've gone 2 full games without scoring a touchdown at home now. The last time they were here was a Lions game. Jerry's birthday, his 82nd birthday, and they lost by 35 points. 47-9. No touchdowns in the game Dak Prescott started and finished. Today, Cooper Rush on Mike McCarthy's 61st birthday, not much better success. They get blown out again. They don't get a touchdown out of Cooper Rush, and they don't get a touchdown out of Trey Lance, who finishes the game. And how weird was that at the end of the 3rd quarter when he finally brings Trey Lance in for 2 plays, and then everybody thought Rush was done for the day, and he takes Lance back at it. If you're going to use Lance in a package of plays, where was he in those goal line situations down there when you had a chance to score and win and be ahead in the game? When the game was still competitive. Yeah. They didn't put him out there until it was 28-6. And they had a package for him, and it was some kind of RPO. Well, that's what we're work down on the goal line. Yes. Might as well try it back then. And then, of course, they put him back in to play, and then they have him with about 10 minutes left. They have him, he throws a deep ball, and, of course, it's picked. I mean, Jerry was asked after the game, and we'll hear from Jerry here in a minute, if you wanted, would you want to see Cooper Rush or Trey Lance? And Jerry didn't really. He said, I want to win the game. Yeah, I want to win the game. Whoever it's going to take to play to win the games, that's what my objective is, win games. Now, I think a lot of the fan base at this point, and many of them here were lustily expressing their disdain for Mike McCarthy and the offense, at least by halftime and well into the 3rd quarter. The Cowboys have set a dubious record. They've now trailed by 20 points at home in 5 consecutive games. They're the first team in NFL history to trail by 20 points in 5 consecutive home games. As currently constructed, this is one of the worst teams in the NFL. But Jerry's point was, forget losing games and getting higher draft picks. I mean, they haven't picked. This is like 2015 to me. This is like when Romo got hurt, and they went 6-10, and they picked 4th overall, and they picked Ezekiel Elliott. They got Dak Prescott in the 4th round in that draft. It started to look like that. The other thing I want to say before we close this section on McCarthy, and if you want to go to Jerry, we certainly can. But This was the first time that Kellen Moore, the former Cowboys offensive coordinator and play caller, came back here. And remember McCarthy's infamous quote about Kellen Moore when he said, all Kellen Moore wants to do is light up the scoreboard. I want to run the damn ball so I can rest my defense. Well, it seemed to me Kellen Moore had a pretty good running game today, and he ran up and he still scored a lot of points, a lot more than McCarthy's team did. He won the play caller matchup decisively. Kellen Moore
in a runaway. And,
so I'm sure Kellen Moore.
They have more horses, of course they do. But Jerry, at least, by the way, if you're wondering, and this was the part that you're not going to hear, so I'll just say it. He did try to take accountability and go, hey, a lot of this is on me. Of course, when he was questioned about like what he would do or what he would regret, in the past he's gotten mad at like radio show hosts. But yeah, I don't know what he truly regrets other than just sort of doing nothing over the offseason. But even then he gets defensive. So there will be, just so there's nothing, one question that was asked as well that I need to clarify is this whole thing about with Dak out. I think there's some thought as to, does that help Mike McCarthy's cause, and could those extenuating circumstances create an opportunity to either extend Mike for at least one more season or something to that effect? And I think Jerry just, again, focused it back on needing to win, but did not indicate in any way that these injuries, because what he kept referring to is, hey, nothing's fair. Nothing's fair out here.
No
right?
excuses. I think he feels like this is Mike McCarthy's bonus year. This is the latitude I'm giving him. I didn't fire him after the Green Bay loss.
You're right. And he made the point that this team was pretty bad with Dak, which is a very fair point and one we've made over and over. But when we talk about people who tend to be delusional at times, they don't always make these points. And Jerry did make that point. It's like, did you see how bad we were with Dak? Was basically what he was saying. He wasn't ripping Dak, right. But he was basically saying this team did not perform well at home with him.
Tonight, though, 49 passing yards by Cooper Rush and Trey Lance. That's the fewest in a game for the Cowboys since their 2001 season opener against the Bucs. Only one quarterback has 2 times passed for fewer yards in a game, and it was Anthony both times. What was his name?
What year?
Anthony. They replaced Aikman.
Oh, I know you're talking about
Anthony Wright. Anthony Wright.
Yeah.
That's who it was.
Yeah.
And one more stat.
Baltimore.
One more stat. The Cowboys are now minus 94 in point differential at home this year. That means they've been beaten in 4 games by a total of 94 points. That's the 6th worst by any team through 4 home games in the Super Bowl era, and it's the worst by a team that made the playoffs the year before.
My goodness.
That's how grim this situation has become, and plenty of preseason football still to come.
Sir, 8 more games as Jerry was doing the math. I will tell you and tell our audience, Mingo is on the way.
Jonathan Mingo.
Monday night.
The wide receiver that they just acquired.
Houston Texans.
For another 4th-round pick.
Jonathan Mingo. Some people believe the Cowboys gave up too much for a player of Jonathan Mingo's status in the league. And I would tend to agree with that. 4th-round pick, probably too much for Jonathan Mingo. Let's let you hear something. This was, and there was a large group, as always, with Jerry Jones, and then there was what we call a breakaway group. If some people went into the locker room, Jerry kept walking, but Jerry, and this was kind of Jerry's fault that this even happened, because Jerry, without sort of unprompted, somebody must have brought it to his attention, and he's extremely sensitive about the light in the players' eyes, which always seems to impact the home team, and it reared its ugly head again. Cowboys down 7-3, desperately needing to score. It could have taken a 10-7 lead in this ball game. That would have felt like a huge breakthrough, and they weren't able to do it. And then, as Ed pointed out, you had a player in CeeDee Lamb saying he couldn't see anything. The sun was in his eyes. Jerry addresses this, and here are a few minutes of
6 minutes, I think, was Jerry.
6 minutes of our back and forth with Jerry Jones. And just as you're listening to this, imagine him having an elevator being held for him. And at one point, Will McClay was able to get on the elevator, and then the elevator closed, and Jerry's bodyguard looked very panicked. But then it opened back up, and Jerry did 6 or 7 minutes with us. Here is Jerry Jones.
You won't make a coaching change during the season.
Yes, I believe that. Yes. Thanks, guys. I'm not trying to run for it.
You haven't?
Okay, but good. But I don't believe we'll make a coaching change during the season.
What gives you the most confidence that you can get something turned around at this point? With how
Well,
bad
I've seen every one of these players play better. I've seen us get them ready better. I've seen us coach it up better. I've seen it. And so I'm aware of that. And that's all you got to go on when you're making a decision about the future. It's what you've seen in the past. But I've seen us play better than this. And I sure as heck have seen us play better in this game than we played in the third quarter and parts of the first and second quarter. But that's just not satisfactory. There's no illusion here.
Have you ever been able to put a finger on why you think these games, particularly here, have been so lopsided since the Green Bay game?
I have not, but that's what's his first time in how many years Philadelphia's won one here?
Six, yeah.
6, okay, but I'm not. They've got a good team, but absolutely no as far as what's going on. The better question is what are we doing at the half to let the water out of the tub at the half on third quarter. That really is a puzzle.
How damaging did you think it was when you had a chance to take the lead after the turnover and you kicked the field goal and since scoring a touchdown?
Yeah, instead of getting the touchdown, and we had a great shot, 1st and 10, I think, on about the 5 or 6, and a great shot at it. But boy, that's how you maybe with a little less than your opponent at this time as a team, not having our quarterback, whatever you call it. That's how you win these kind of games is when you get the ball on the 5 or 6 yard line, you do it. I thought we hung in there good after fumbling that ball on the second snap when we started the ball game. So I was feeling real good frankly as we went at the half relative to what we are and relative to what Philadelphia is.
Jerry, you've had so many extenuating circumstances and injuries this year. How much does that factor into your evaluation of the coaching staff, Mike McCarthy in particular?
Well, I'm aware of the things that have happened to us and the degree, in my mind, how they've influenced things. And candidly, I take a lot of that in consideration when I'm looking at any individual. And coaching especially. And but there is, in my mind, a lot of accountability when the receiver is having trouble getting open, or there has to be accountability directed to somebody that other than just the player. I do that. I really do that. And by the way, it's not without other people giving their input on how those players or how those coaches are coaching too. This isn't just stepping out here and me just doing it. You can imagine I've got a lot of people I counsel with.
Jerry, how much input do you offer, and who starts at quarterback between Trey and Cooper and going forward?
Well, I want to see us win the games. I want to win the game. And so I want to do the things to win the game. And so I had hoped that Cooper would, Rush could come in here and have the kind of games that he did 2 years ago. And had reason to think that, and frankly, hope that something of that nature will happen again. This is not fun. This isn't pretty. And I thought we'd do better, frankly,
Jerry,
moving the ball.
You talked before about why you don't believe in an in-season coaching change. What's the threshold at which you think it is helpful, or what would change your mind, if anything?
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting. I changed coaches in the season with Wade and have always regretted it. And as a matter of fact, I made a change with Chan Gailey after 2 years. I regretted that. That's not enough. You need to give yourself a chance. I've had a lot more rope than that in my time. I haven't had anybody pulling that short on me.
That Wade team was 1-7, right? I mean, when you made that change.
Well, but still, what are we? 3-6. Okay. Well, that's better. That's better math. But I sure don't sit around and say, well, now we get -2 more and we're going to be in there. I really don't.
Yeah.
And no, I just Mike's a heck of a coach. He's a great coach in my mind, and has and should have the opportunity to do better than we're playing right now. So I'm like I said, I haven't had good experience changing coaches in the middle of the season.
What would success look like for him over the rest of the season? Is it winning a certain number of games? Is it figuring out an offensive development? What do you want to see from Mike the rest of the season?
My criteria has always been how we're playing. Are we? Do we have an edge? Are we fundamentally? Are we competitive? Are we competitive when we're down? Those kinds of things. Not as much, obviously, the score. What does Bill say? You are what the score tells you are, but still, you look at all of those things, and there's no fairness. Let me be real clear. Nobody's trying to be fair here. We're trying to win a game, and so those are the things I'm looking at to help be a part of decisions that could help us win a game. There's no joy here without winning games, and I'm very regretful to our fans. Very. Okay, guys.
Thank you.
All right, there he was, Jerry, and I mean that last part of it, Ed, just to kind of go back to it. Jerry now says he regrets firing Wade Phillips when he did, which makes no sense.
And Chan Gailey after 2 years.
Chan Gailey, but I've heard the Chan Gailey one for years. This Wade one's relatively new. They were 1-7. They completely quit on him.
Yep.
I think even Wade was like, "Can somebody fire me, please?" And he moved on about his business. And the team somewhat rallied around Jason Garrett. And that season, did he have to rally with John Kitna as his quarterback? I think so, right? And I believe John Kitna was the quarterback for that team. And the Cowboys went something like maybe 5-3 or 4-4. And Garrett became the head coach. But
which would have been inevitable anyway. And Wade knew it. It was an awkward situation because Jerry had hired Jason Garrett to be the offensive play caller before he hired Wade. And so then it became, is Wade willing to accept Jason Garrett as the offensive play caller, knowing full well that in all likelihood Jerry is eventually going to replace Wade Phillips with Jason Garrett.
Now, I think what people would like to hear, Ed, is when Jerry fired Dave Campo all those years ago, circa after the 2002 season, maybe a little bit before the end of the season, there were conversations going on. And of course, they famously hired Bill Parcells. I mean, like, this thing's going so poorly that Jerry's not going to wait around in terms of doing, looking at his list and getting ready and getting things in line. Where do you think, Ed, you've covered so many of these coach searches, and you know how competitive it gets, and you can only interview certain coaches, and the playoffs present a challenge because there may be coaches they want to talk to that are on some of these staffs that will be in the playoffs. How do you think Jerry will start to handle that process? Will he let himself start now to do a little bit of legwork on that?
It would shock me if they haven't already been doing that since he decided to bring McCarthy back and work the final year of his contract. He surely knew it was a very long shot that McCarthy was going to win with the team that Jerry was providing him after just seeing how badly they were, outplayed at home in the playoffs by a young Green Bay team and a quarterback in Love who had never been in the postseason. And Jerry knew that they did nothing in the offseason to improve this team beyond the draft. And, that CeeDee Lamb held out. I mean, McCarthy was talking about it earlier this week about how you like to have your full 90-player team together in April for the whole offseason. Instead, they signed 3 defensive tackles at the end of training camp. And so there was no competition for Mosley Smith. It was a huge disappointment as a first-round pick his rookie year. CeeDee Lamb wasn't there. And so there was, no chemistry and timing being developed between him and Dak Prescott until the season started. And Dak's deal wasn't done until, Jerry took a timeout in the second quarter in Cleveland and went down the sideline and signed him for all intents and purposes. I think that they've been making calls and quietly doing, the research they can do about getting recommendations and, putting together the list that they'll pursue. And, whether Bill Belichick's on that list, I don't know. He should be. Mike Vrabel should be on that list.
Ben Johnson.
I think a lot of the guys who have been in the Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, Sean McVay, that would be Ben Johnson, Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator in Atlanta, but he's only been calling plays for 1 year there. Liam Cohen, same thing from the Rams, and McVay calling plays in Tampa for the first time. Clint Kubiak calling plays for the first time in New Orleans. So there are some people from that coaching tree, and I would have to think that based on how badly the Cowboys have played against that scheme through a variety of different opponents, that would have to be something they're interested in if they don't go for, somebody like Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel.
And obviously, Vrabel may be just what the doctor ordered: young, fiery. I know Mike McCarthy's from Pittsburgh and is somewhat of a tough guy, but certainly doesn't have kind of the fire that Vrabel would bring, and does not have the reputation, of course, that Belichick would bring in here, and the credibility to boot. And I think we'll start reading the tea leaves on Belichick, because he's so in the media right now that he'll leave little nuggets here and there, and I do think there'll be organizations that he's interested in. And as bad as this team and this roster looks right now, it's still a team that I think some people would be interested in. And
I think when these coaches, that's the question. Like with Belichick, he's looking to win 15 more regular season games quickly and replace Don Shula as the winningest head coach in NFL history. Is this the right platform for him to do that? Does he look at the roster and say, there's enough talent there for me to do what I need to there? How big a problem is the Dak Prescott contract in the view of these coaches in terms of building a team around a quarterback who is going to be, just imagine if Dak did not get his contract on opening day. Imagine if he was unsigned, finishing his contract. He's going to be 32. He'll have suffered 2 leg injuries that have cost him nearly all of 2 different seasons. His mobility is really limited now, and they will be having probably a top 10 draft pick, and they could be in a position to potentially take a quarterback. Although this quarterback class, I don't think has really distinguished itself as uniquely special. But just imagine where Dak Prescott would be if he hadn't signed that contract.
So do you think Jerry's sitting here regretting signing him to that contract?
I guess we should have asked him that, but he wouldn't admit it if he did.
I don't think so.
No.
I'm just wondering.
But it's a fair question.
Yeah. What
I just think Dak, can you imagine the position Dak would be in if he was negotiating off another lost season like this?
Although he's negotiated once with a horrible injury, and he had huge leverage, and he won the negotiation.
Right.
All right, it is time to go to our resident scout, former scout and coach of the Cowboys. It's going to be another harsh session. I think you just need to brace yourself. It is the imposing, the 6'7" former college tight end from the University of Texas. It is Glenn Stretch Smith. It is Stretch Plays with Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout and coach. Stretch, I don't know if you can see the spotlight like right in my hair, but that's okay. That's okay. Let me move that around just a little bit. Good to have you. Cowboys lose this one 34-6. Season slipping away from them, may have already slipped away completely. It is they are 3-6. And, people tune in. They want your grades. Jerry even tried to grade this thing a little bit today. Stretch, where do you want to start with this thing? I know there was one play in particular that you saw where you almost saw another quarterback injury over there on the sideline. But where do you want to? First of all, this quarterback, obviously the backup, we wondered if they could rally behind Cooper Rush. It didn't happen. Stretch, from your vantage point, what was the biggest reason why the Cowboys couldn't, given the defense was playing well, why couldn't the Cowboys seem to get anything going on offense?
Well, I'm gonna start by giving what I feel like is the only passing grade of the entire group, and that's to Awesome Richards. I mean, I thought he played for a guy who was a last-minute starter. Literally, I thought he played about as good as you could play in that situation. I thought that kid played his butt off to give him a chance with the left tackle. The rest of them that were getting play calls from the sideline from a guy who looks like he's reading off of a Denny's menu, F for the offense. And I'm saying that because defensively, you got multiple chances right there in the first half to be able to at least keep the game tight. And offensively, I mean, it's just literally as bad as maybe anything I've ever seen. And I was here when we had Quincy Carter, and we know what his struggles were, and Clint Sterner. And I mean, I was here when we had some guys that were, literally just guys. And I'm not talking bad about them. I'm saying, I mean, we were not a good football team at that point. And to watch this tonight, this afternoon, and to think that you never gave your defense any chance at all, I mean, it's beyond comprehension. Dowdle had a nice 19-yard run to get the ball down in there, and then they promptly give it to Zeke, and he burps it for the touchback. It really is. I couldn't figure out what McCarthy was trying to do. It felt like he was almost just trying to keep the game somewhat from being a blowout, checking the ball down and trying to get in position to get that kid some good throws. And again, it's the easiest thing to do to sit here and criticize the play caller, but it was almost like Vic Fangio's defense was like a python that just squeezed the air right out of you, and you never had a chance. Never had a chance. And I saw Cooper Rush when he played against Minnesota. It had to be maddening for Mike Zimmer to sit there and watch that and think that's the same guy that beat us when I was the head coach at Minnesota, came into to Minnesota and beat them. There was nothing there. It was like he was real unsure where to go with the football. There's no velocity on the football. There's no accuracy with the football. Again, guys, when you get in these situations where there's nothing that you can point to other than a reserved left tackle that gave you a winning effort, it's going to be a long, rough watch tomorrow. And I don't know where you go. I mean, I've heard guys say, well, let's put Trey Lance in there and let's run a bunch of zone read and let him keep the foot. It's not what you are. It's not what you're built on. It's not what you can do. Sure, could you have a little red zone package where you might be able to put him in the game and run some of the same zone read stuff that you've run all along? You could do that. But at the end of the day, this looks like a football team that is very flat, that knows that there's not a lot of accountability on offense, that knows the head coach is out of here, knows the staff's going to be out of there. We're not talking about a 2 or 3 week window right here. We're talking about 2 months. You're talking about 8 football games. And at this point, you could get yourself really hurt. And I'm talking about physically hurt. When you got the starting quarterback standing down there thumbing his nuts and the ball gets fumbled into the boundary and the third string quarterback goes to make a play and about takes his knee out. I mean, at some point you got to say, what are we doing, guys? Get that quarterback, get his ass upstairs in the press box. You can get him his little earpiece in so he can hear the call. No business down there. And it looked as bad as it can look. So, F, Mosley.
Man, I like that last point. F for the offense, except Asim Richards, number 76, I believe, over there on the left side, playing for the Cowboys, in for Guyton, playing at left tackle for the Cowboys as they play out the string. And Stretch, you might be interested to hear that now Jerry has deep regrets over firing Wade Phillips during the season, all those many years ago. Although that team was 1-7, if you'll recall, and they completely got embarrassed in Green Bay, and Jason Garrett took over, and Jason Garrett then was the coach for about a decade for these Cowboys. So that's kind of interesting that Jerry's now, seeing it like that. Stretch on the other side on the defense, whether it be Lawson, Parsons, Overshown. I know he got hurt later, but you were getting a winning effort from the defense in the first half. And I think that, again, that summarizes how bad the Cowboys are, that they could not capitalize on what was a pretty solid performance from the defense in the first half.
Yeah, and it was a well-designed scheme of what Mike Zimmer was doing. We know he likes to A-gap blitz, and he's shown it a lot of times. He showed it with some different personnel groupings, with what I would call a 3-3 grouping, where he had Kendricks, Overshown, Leofau in the game, along with Parsons, who's really a linebacker. So if you really wanted to start breaking it down, you could say it was 2 defensive linemen and 4 linebackers. But you were getting a combination of those things. And in that time frame, you got a really good, you can tell, I'm going to show it tonight on WFAA, where they've got 7 guys up in there. Dallas does, 2 linebackers in the A gaps, and it messes up Philadelphia's count on how they're going to protect. And on the Parsons sack, the strip sack, you get the defensive tackle go out. He takes 3 guys with him. He takes the guard, the tackle, and the back. Parsons loops underneath, gets the strip sack, and gets the ball back for the offense inside the red zone. They did some good things. This is a team that had 5 sacks in the first half. 5 sacks in the first half with a bunch of guys other than Parsons. It's hard to even call their names. Now, I thought Overshown showed you his speed. I thought Leofau showed you some things and what he can do. I mean, and then you got guys playing their butt off. I mean, Tyrus Wheat and Carl Lawson and guys in there that I didn't even think we'd even be talking about them playing this year, but they gave you a damn good effort and an opportunity in the first half. When you're going 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out, at some point, your defense is going to gas out, and I think that's what happened in the second half. But when you look, if you're honest with yourself, Mike Zimmer had a decent game plan. They went and executed it, 5 sacks in the first half. You should be able to somewhat capitalize on that. And for that, I'm going to give the defense, the entire defense, a solid B. Now, do I think Kalen Carson gets beat at times? Yeah, he does. He's a backup guy, but he also made a couple of plays. You saw Jordan Lewis made a couple of plays. I mean, Dallas Goedert matched up against Donovan Wilson. Is that a great match in the red zone? No, it's not. But they brought Overshown. He comes through the gap and he can't make the tackle on Hurts. Extends the play and throws a touchdown. That happens. I mean, the other guys are on scholarship too. So I don't have a problem with that. I dang sure don't ding guys for that. I thought you saw Diggs really do a good job on the interception. He slow played that interception and baited that seam throw. He fell right back in there and made the pick. So I saw some good things, and I can tell you, I guarantee you, he had seen that play in practice because he played it perfectly. And so when you look at it and you see schematically what Zimmer was trying to do and how he was trying to line his defense up just to give an offense any opportunity, they did just that in the first half. And then, the offense goes and, 3 and out and 3 and out and 3 and out, and you start crapping the bed that many times, at some point they say to hell with this. And I just think we're looking at a long 8-week stretch right here. And, my hope is that you start playing a bunch of these young guys, as many of these young guys as you can play. I know what Zeke is. It is time to move on. I mean, it's time to see the young man from Kansas State get in there and see if he can do something. I want to see the new receiver that they just traded for. Get him in there and see if he can do something. I like Brooks, but I know what he can do. I'm ready to see some of these younger guys, and I feel the same way in the back end of the defense. Let's see where we're at, see if these guys are worth keeping around, because at the point you sit right now, first week in October, 3-6 football team with a lot of football to play. You need to use this time to the best of your ability, and the ability is going to be, we got to use this time to do some evaluation on these players, and we got to find out if they can play, because guess what? Come January, you're going to have to reach up and hit the reset button and see if you can restack and realign this football team.
Yeah, and boy, you made a good point earlier. It's like we're going to see who's still invested on this team. We're going to see who's checked out on this coaching staff and who's going to hang in there and fight. And to your point, some of these young players, it may not even be for the Cowboys. It may be auditioning for other teams, but there's going to have to be a pride factor. And again, is that seeing Trey Lance for a long period of time, the rest of the season? Maybe so, maybe not. But help is not on the way unless you view Jonathan Mingo as help. But I'm mildly interested in seeing what he has. They gave up a 4th-round pick. Let's put him in there, let him run some routes, and see what happens. Stretch, best of luck tonight on WFAA. That's 10:30, and then of course your noon show on Mondays. Lots going on WFAA, and really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here on the Doomsday podcast.
Sorry to bother you, Mosley.
Stretch plays. Ed, you always enjoy a good stretch play. I do want to.
Seems like some people should be kicked out of school with the grades they've been accumulating at this point.
Yeah. And I think it was one of the things Jerry brought up today. At some point, he was like, what are you going to do? Give him a F minus, a C? If that doesn't matter at this point. He's throwing out all the grades. Sound like some of his old report cards there at Arkansas. No, Jerry, I think, did he graduate magna cum laude or something? I think didn't he say one time he had the brain of a 40-year-old just about 10 years ago? Okay, so, and I do want to say thank you, Marable Homes. That is we've got this thing lined up, and I know Ed's been wanting to see this, but we've got some footage that we're taking, and these are gorgeous homes, Lake Highlands, Preston Hollow, Highland Park, and then, of course, Ed's out in Flower Mound. They'll come out there.
Why don't you tell people where you live?
The luxury, Lake Highlands.
You always tell people where I live. You never say where you live.
I'm in Lake Highlands, beautiful Lake Highlands. We just won a district championship. We're marching on. But yeah, Blake Marable, Amy Marable, incredible family business. It was helped started by one of the legends of the Cowboys family, and that is Clint Murkison, who was the first Cowboys owner, and Clint Murkison's son was one of the people who helped get them started in the home building process, and they've done a beautiful job. Custom luxury homes, the kind of homes Ed Werder loves and desires. Okay, Ed, the Cowboys now on a slow march toward obscurity and all those irrelevancy. They are 3-6, and you got Monday Night Football coming up against the Texans. That should get them to 3-7. And then we'll talk some. That'll be Commanders, who had a tough loss today, by the way. And so anyway, and then of course you got Thanksgiving coming up. This thing's. I mean, where do
the Cowboys could get flexed out of Thanksgiving?
No, they do own Thanksgiving.
Okay.
There could be later this season a flex. It's only happened to the Cowboys once in the past 15 years that I can recall. And it could happen later this season.
And that would send a strong message to Jerry.
I think that's the only thing that would get his attention.
Well, that and the curtains. Criticism of the curtains.
He hates the criticism of, yes, the fact he built this thing as some sort of
He
huge.
said, we should tear it down. What do you want me to do? Tear it down? Put up some curtains. His reaction and his justification is, well, it affects both teams.
Yeah.
We know where the sun's going to be.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
And he
Why
wanted
does
to
it have
say
to affect either team?
it doesn't. Yeah. So
He just doesn't get that. He's like, well, it affects both teams.
Yeah.
Well, don't let it.
Yeah. You could keep that from happening.
That's the whole reason you're playing a dome, is so you can
And doesn't it seem to
eliminate the elements.
most of the time impact his team
It
negatively?
does. Well, we all pointed out when it happens that way. That's why. But it would be nice if, I'm sure in his mind, if it would adversely affect his opponent. But that doesn't ever seem to happen.
All right. So to summarize, Ed talks to Dak after the game, along with a couple other reporters, and Dak sort of confirms some of the reports out there. And so tomorrow, Ed, he'll get kind of another opinion, and it could end up from this person he's talking to, this surgeon. That surgeon could end up doing the actual surgery
in New York on Wednesday,
which would be what, a 3 to 4 month
3 to 4 months
rehab process.
Yeah.
Okay,
and that's a virtual certainty anyway. And as he described it, and as I said earlier, based on the timeline he gave us, even if he doesn't have surgery and he has a most favorable possible response to treatment alone, it would still put him out for almost all of the season. And what's going to be their motivation to play him in a year like this?
nothing.
Nothing. Although I will tell you, they're 3-6. In each of the last 4 years, a 3-6 team has made the playoffs. And last year, 2 3-6 teams made the playoffs: the Rams and the Packers. Not that I think this one's going to do it, because now they don't have the quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't win at home.
Rams and Packers did have their quarterback, did not have to go to a backup, and the Packers ended up extending their quarterback after they just crushed the Cowboys here. So yeah, it is not. I mean, even as optimistic as Ed is,
I'm very I'm well known to be optimistic.
Just pump sunshine all around the place. That's right. Help does not appear to be on the way, unless John. Can I interest you in Jonathan? No, wait, what's his name? Mingo.
Oh, Jonathan Mingo.
Jonathan Mingo. He's headed to town. I think he's already here. And I saw pictures of him. He does look like a big, bruising young man at wide receiver.
Catch the ball. He's got to catch the ball.
Okay. Yeah.
Got to get open. Got to have a quarterback capable of throwing him the ball, and then he has to catch it. Not all of those things have happened on a very common basis.
All right. So only good news to come out of this game.
It's over.
Micah was back. Yeah, that you can stop. Don't stop listening, though, to the Doomsday podcast, because we're going to continue. We may have to get kind of creative, but we're going to give you all sorts of nuggets, and we're going to dig in. Yeah,
we're out of a game, but look at all look at all the behind the scenes info you get.
The random podcasters who do it from afar never can give you Jerry. They can't get into the locker room. They can't do all these things that we do, and they just can't look like we do. I think people could look better, but and thank you to the Nation family. Beautiful digs. This is our favorite suite to do games, to do the podcast, and so you can see. Ed, move that way so they can see. There it is. We're at the stadium. That's not one of those little screens we put up.
It's not a green screen.
It's not a green screen.
Not a pull down like I have at home.
Ed, any shout outs for anybody? Any of our listeners, our adoring audience?
Just to Mike Hamilton of Rogue Media.
Yeah, that's nice, Ed. Yeah.
Well, I'll do that.
Mike's always there, and you cannot imagine how much Mike does to help me on a day-to-day basis. So shout out to Mike. Shout out to the Rogue Media Network.
Oh, don't forget my appearance tomorrow morning.
Oh, on WFAA. That'll happen at about 6:30 a.m. And Ed will be with Mark Istook.
Correct.
And it's one of the reasons I do watch Channel 8 in the mornings to see
Daybreak
what Ed has to say. And then our other guest, and our other always member of the panel, Glenn Stretch Smith, is on there on Sundays on that sports special at 10:30. Man loves a good sport coat with a T-shirt under it,
or a golf shirt,
the dress T-shirt, a golf shirt, kind of an interesting look. But what are you going to do? But does a nice job. I mean, I'm wearing a hoodie, so I can't say too much. But all right, for Rogue Media Network and my good friend Ed Werder, I am Matt Mosley. Good night from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. We'll see you next time.
We are Rogue Media Sports. Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.